An ever-growing sentiment within the gamer community is that gaming just isn't the same anymore. What was once an enjoyable pastime has become a chore. Even booting up a game feels like a hassle. And that's something I can personally back up too. Even with hundreds of video games to my disposal, turning on one of them and actually playing them just seems a little bit boring. Which is weird because I used to play games like my life depended on it. I used to spend literally thousands of hours in Minecraft, which seemed like per day, honestly. But now my PS4 is nothing much more than a glorified paperweight that I sometimes turn on to watch a couple of movies, and then sometimes turn it on, listen to the home screen music, and then turn it off after like 5 minutes. I know a lot of people can relate to that one. But to understand why modern gaming is failing, we first have to go back to the past to understand what made gaming so good in the first place. Now, we won't be going as far as the original Pong or Pac-Man or even something crazy like Custer's Revenge, but we will look at some great classics. Let's set the stage. Think back to when you were a kid. Imagine it's the middle of summer vacation and you're pulling an all-nighter. Chip bags and other snacks litter the floor completely, and your breath smells of flavored drinks. Your eyes are bloodshot from the hours of screen time and your sleep schedule is pretty much non-existent. You're having the time of your life, making memories on your favorite video game, one that you couldn't find time to play during the school year at all, thanks to teachers who love giving out thousands of homework packets instead of actually teaching. And the game you were having so much fun with was the original 1996 PlayStation 1 exclusive Resident Evil 1. In the 1996 PlayStation 1 exclusive Resident Evil, one key component of gaming's golden era is clear, and that was originality. Resident Evil combined survival zombie action with intriguing puzzle solving, resource management, and a restrictive movement system within tight claustrophobic spaces. And its visual style was very unique for the time, with pre-rendered backgrounds, but with real-time enemy and character models. Selling over 2.75 million copies, Resident Evil solidified itself in the gaming market and influenced countless future titles. For example, just 4 years later, in 1999, Silent Hill would release, taking heavy inspiration from its predecessor. In an interview by Bokeh Game Studio, Silent Hill creator Keiichiro Toyama revealed this. Obviously, there was no point in simply imitating Resident Evil with Silent Hill. It wouldn't make much sense to make a copy. There was a challenge trying to make all the backgrounds and polygons. However, when asked about small details, we would simply tell them to copy Resident Evil. When Silent Hill took inspiration from Resident Evil, it innovated on the many survival horror tropes. Silent Hill leaned towards psychological horror, building tension with eerie, soul-piercing music and grotesque set pieces. The game introduced a collection of horrifying original monsters that made the players feel disturbed at every turn. Innovation didn't stop here though. Games like Metal Gear Solid inspired stealth-based franchises like Hitman and Assassin's Creed, while the original Doom laid the foundation for modern FPS games like BioShock and Halo, and even fighting games like Street Fighter 2 paved the way for Mortal Kombat, Tekken, and Virtua Fighter. And we cannot forget about the original Resident Evil 4 that revolutionized the over-the-shoulder camera angle, which gave players tight control of aiming while still keeping the character on screen. At the time, that was huge. Before that time, third-person cameras were either too floaty or either just use fixed cinematic angles, but RE4 influenced so many games like The Last of Us, Dead Space, and even Batman Arkham Asylum. And while we can talk forever about what games from the past inspired games today, what really is important is the fact that back in the day, originality led to innovation, and innovation led to more originality, a simple cycle that fueled gaming's golden age. Nowadays, we just have games that are basically the same game with a different title and packaging. I'm looking at Overwatch 2, which is a sequel in name, but really it's just a glorified DLC. Game companies are really out here recycling maps, tweaking a few mechanics, adding a battle pass, and acting like it's a whole new era of gameplay. But in reality, it's the furthest from the truth. It's just the same game, same engine, same everything, now with just more microtransactions and a lack of a soul. Another good reason why older games were so great is the fact that they weren't just made for profit, they were made for fun. Developers created games that they themselves wanted to play. It was made by gamers for gamers, not by a company just for profit. Back then, games came fully packaged with no paywalls, no game-breaking bugs, and no reliance on DLC to complete the experience. Companies focused on delivering the best possible product to consumers, not squeezing the most money out of them. Take Nintendo's 2002 Super Mario Sunshine, for example. It featured tight controls, vibrant graphics, unique physics, and hours of content. Older games might not have had the 4K graphics or massive open worlds, but they had charm, polish, and heart. While there were some games back then that came out unfinished or downright unplayable, it wasn't as bad as nowadays, where putting out games that are half finished is the norm. We shouldn't have to rely on day one patches and DLC updates 2 days after downloading the game to fix it. And you would think that with all the pushback by gamers, companies would try to release better games. But even nowadays, Mind's Eye, which was a very hyped game, came out, and it was, without a shadow of a doubt, just the worst gaming experience that anybody could have played. I mean, it's almost laughable how companies think they can get away with releasing complete dog. But where did it all go wrong? Well, it all is really encapsulated in one simple word, and that's greed. Once companies realized how profitable gaming could be, the focus shifted from fun to profit. Thus came microtransactions, virtual currency, loot boxes, pay-to-win advantages, and other tactics designed to extract money from players after purchasing the game. These monetization methods have fundamentally altered game design. Items that could once be unlocked through gameplay are now hidden behind paywalls, and games are designed to make grinding for content feel unbearable unless you pay for it. For instance, once Battlefront 2 came out, it originally took 40 hours of gameplay to unlock certain characters like Darth Vader, which received so much pushback from gamers they had to actually lower the requirements. Now, I get grinding for content and making a gamer feel empowered for unlocking collectibles and different characters, but 40 hours of gameplay just for one character, one unlockable, when you could just buy the character for like, what, $5? We can clearly see what they're trying to push on the gamers here. But microtransactions didn't just stop there. The push for profit led into the thing called games as a service. In this microtransaction model, games are released incomplete and rely on updates or DLC to deliver promised content. The results are underdeveloped games with bugs and glitches all throughout them. Imagine buying a cheeseburger for $5, only to find out that that was just for the bun. The actual patty cost $10, the lettuce cost $20, and the tomatoes cost $50 extra. And you'll have to wait a year or two before any of this content is available. And that's the sad state of modern gaming. Live service games, microtransactions, and just underdeveloped, unfinished DLC-esque games are just ruining what gaming used to be. Innovation, fun, and a complete package. Those things are completely almost gone from the day's gaming market. The games as a service model only stifles creativity. Games like NBA 2K are churned out yearly with minimal changes, and what makes this even crazier is that servers for older iterations of the game are shut down after only 2 years, rendering any purchase you made completely obsolete and a waste of money and time. And let's not even talk about the forced DRM that makes games unplayable if you're not connected to the internet. Like, bro, why does my single player farming simulator need to check in with a server just to let me pick a carrot? It's crazy. You're really just paying full price for half of a game. The other half is locked behind 10 different paywalls and a stable Wi-Fi connection. You don't own your games anymore. You just subscribe to the illusion of ownership. Oh, you want to play that racing game you bought 3 years ago? Well, too f***ing bad, man. The servers are completely down and you can't access any of the content with no servers. The content is gone. Your hours wasted. The game you bought, oh, if you don't own it, you don't own it at all. Not all companies follow these shady business practices. Some use DLC to expand on already great games. For example, The Witcher 3 offered 2 paid expansions that collectively added 60 hours to the base game's already impressive 173-hour runtime. Additionally, some games in today's market still exceed expectations. Titles like Red Dead Redemption 2, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Elden Ring, and Mario Kart 8. All those games continue to set high standards for quality and and innovation, pushing back against the toxic environment of modern gaming. Now, we can't just blame the entire thing on gaming companies. Some of this actually falls on the gamers themselves. Many gamers stick to one genre, one platform, or simply one type of game, limiting their experiences. Gaming has become monotonous for some simply because they refuse to try something new. I mean, if you play 2K and Call of Duty all day, you really can't come on the internet and say, gaming is dead. Like, you haven't even tried 95% of what gaming has to offer. Have you tried an open world RPG, a VR horror game like Phasmophobia, or even retro games like The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask on the N64? The possibilities are endless, yet so many gamers remain trapped in a bubble of familiarity. Finally, for some, gaming has become boring or monotonous because of the fact that it's their only escape from reality. Spending countless hours completing missions, collecting trophies, and leveling up characters can lead to burnout. As you grow older, your interests and priorities naturally shift. Perhaps it's time to focus on family, friends, career goals, or even personal growth. Instead of leveling up your character, maybe it's time to level up your life. Letting go of gaming can be daunting, especially if you invested years, money, and effort into it, but the memories you made, the all-nighters, the friends, the adventures, will always stay with you. Maybe it's time to put the controller down, or at least take a break. The virtual world will always be there waiting for you to return, and when you do, things may be different, but the gaming market, for better or for worse, is only getting started. Gamers frequently and then sometimes turn off for just 5 minutes, listen to the home. But to understand why modern gaming is failing, we first have to go back to the past. Yeah, who the f just texted me, bro? Titles like Red Dead Redemption 2, The Last of Us Breath of the Wild. Whoa, what the fuck?
So you guys know how the modern upright the perfect country and it's just like anime in real life and everyone's happy there. You guys are aware of that, right? Like when you think of Japan, you think of paradise on earth, Shangri-La, and there's actually no issues. Well, it turns out some of the issues we've been discussing in Japan are real and they are bad. And in fact, Japan is not a paradise on earth, but in fact, going through a bit of a crisis on many fronts, a national crisis. Not only are the US tariffs a problem for their economy, but they're going through pretty bad inflation, which they haven't had for a long time, and political upheaval. So the main thing was Ashiba, the party, the LDB party that the current prime minister of Japan is in, has lost their majority in their equivalent of the House for the first time, I believe, ever. I mean, they finally have been unseated. And the Rising Party is like a make Japan great again, Japan first, anti-immigration, anti-tourist party that is rising in Japan, largely because they are now dealing with extreme economic problems. The average person in Japan is seeing their wages worth less and less, and the cost of things go up. Japan doesn't even have severe inflation, they have minor inflation, but it's bad. It's like, it's consistent consistently, prices are rising faster than wages. The yen is getting weaker and weaker. And so it's making people angry and unsettled. Additionally, because some of you have noticed that all of your friends, if you're like a millennial or older Gen Z, are going to Japan, the tourism is way up because their currency is so weak. So if you fly to Japan, your currency, the dollar or whatever, or the euro, is going a lot farther. So everybody's going to Japan having a great trip. So regular Japanese people are getting priced out of like restaurants and everything, while all these tourists are flowing in. To be clear, tourists and tourism is good for the economy. It's not a bad thing. Unfortunately, the same way people blame immigrants when people are tough times, people also blame tourists when the problem is your central bank and your government. If you're a country that has to resort to tourism and there's a flood of tourism, it's not because of the tourists. It is because your country's been put in this spot. They're going to the classic playbooks. They're blaming immigrants and tourists and outsiders basically and saying, make Japan great again. The problem is, like, Japan is demographically in a time bomb. It is so old and getting older. You can't go back to an all Japanese island here and try to turn this economy around. It's really backwards for the problem they're facing. Like I mentioned, Ishiba's done a bad job. He's done a bad job on the tariffs. I got no support of Ishiba in general. He's super in the pocket of rice farmers. People are just clamoring for change. And what I'm trying to explain, and I've explained this consistently, is that Japan is like the end game. They're where everybody's heading in terms of demographics and debt. They're the front line of the war. And they have, again, the world's worst demographics, the people that are super old, really elderly population, and they have the world's worst debt to GDP. Literally the world's worst of any country. And so they're in a spot where they don't have a lot of wiggle room. They have to keep printing money to buy their own government debt to pay the interest and all the debt they already borrowed. So they're in an infinite cycle on that, which is causing the money supply to inflate, which is causing inflation, which is causing people's wages to go less far. And then the wages can't keep up. I don't know what their out is. I don't know what the solution is, but I do know that this was inevitable. We've talked about this for a while, but like this fracturing is, even Japan, which is a country that is normally not very tumultuous politically. They don't have a lot of upheaval. They're very solid and staid. And again, the LDP has been in a majority forever. For decades and decades. Even they are going to have radical change. People are going to get angry because that's what economies like this do. Once you get to this point in the cycle, the debt cycle, shit breaks. People start looking for more and more radical solutions. They need older people in their Senate. You think Japan's solution is to find people that are even older? Well, nobody wants to, if their country's already so old, they don't want to be ruled by people that are younger than them, obviously. You need elder statesmen. Good news on that front, though. Since we're talking about demographics, I do want to bring up something that is actually relevant. If you're not a boomer, I have some good news for you. The oldest baby boomers in the United States are now 79 years old. Do you know what the median age of death is in the United States? It's not good for a developed country. It's 78, which means we are now in the middle of what will be like a 15, 20 year tsunami of boomer deaths. We are going to see a boomer wipeout over the next decade and a half. Their influence over their complete dominance, their iron grip over American politics is finally at an end. Every day there are fewer boomers, significantly. It is happening. Now, will millennials and maybe this bump of Gen Z, it's not shown here, do the same thing? Maybe. Maybe we'll do the same problems. At the very least, we can get newer politicians who can adapt to the ways the world has changed so much since these guys got their brains frozen at 30. That was 1976, bro. Gen X gets nothing, I think. Millennials will hoard all the Pokemon cards like boomers hoarded all the houses Sag. That doesn't sound that bad. I feel like if you don't have housing, you get radicalized. If you don't have Pokemon cards, you're fine. Why does Gen X get nothing? I'm joking that they get nothing, but I just mean that because there's such a boom of millennials, millennial is the most common voter right now. It's more likely to be more millennial politicians than there is Gen X ones. Gen Z's got, it doesn't show Gen Z on here, but they're pretty, there's a good amount of them too. But I do think that Gen Z plus millennials could actually make a difference. Even if they voted in their own interest, that would be incredible because that would just pull some of the wealth that's all concentrated with the boomers out to society. That would just be good. And because millennials are less likely to have a home, they might vote for things that build more homes. Gen Z's the smallest by population. Gen Z's about the same as Gen X. Yeah, it's really a millennial era, huh? Harry Potter till we die. Damn, I can't believe they're going to be rebooting Harry Potter again in 20 years. In 10 years. Gen Z's so obsessed with the stock market, we're never going to end luxury inflation. Is that explain why? Because, stocks are doing quite well right now. I mean, people are all in, bro. Robinhood and zero commission trading changed the game. Yeah, I mean, that's a big part of it. Speaking of Gen Z being financially savvy, percentage of buy now, pay later users who've paid late on their loan. Gen Z has broken 50% in the past year. That's fucking bad. 55% of Gen Z who use BNPL. Baby boomers, their Klarna game's incredible. Their Klarna game's incredible. They don't pay late, probably because they have all the fucking money. They don't even need to be using it. Millennials not far behind though, nearly 50%. Dude, this is so bad. I can't stress enough. This BNPL is an epidemic, bro. People are paying late consistently. Healthy economy, that's what they tell me. That's what they fucking tell me. Banks are coming after BNPL, I know, because they're recognizing it's a fucking scam. I mean, it's a credit risk. They're just not going to get the money back. People aren't able to pay. But I don't think they're too big to fail. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'll be proven wrong. But I think BNPL is just a bad business. Like, are we really going to bail out a Swedish company named Klarna? I don't think so. They're just not getting paid back for all the debt they're leaving out. Actually, retail's not as bad. This is retail activity as a percent of overall market shares traded. So before the pandemic, retail was about 9-10% of the market. In 2021, the height of the NFT bubble and the GameStop craze and everything, it hit 26%. Which is shockingly high. Then it was down for a bit, but now we're kind of back. We're definitely in like 2021 vibes era. People are definitely gambling. They're definitely on. What does this mean? This is basically the amount regular people are trading. This is a good proxy for, are your friends trading stocks on Robinhood? The higher this number is, the more likely that is. I thought retail meant like Old Navy. No, retail means like non-professional traders. Is it good or bad? In my sense, it's bad. If you're a retail person, if you're not like part of the market, you should just buy and hold an index fund. You shouldn't be trading day to day. You're going to lose. Retail traders almost always are wrong. It's just dumb money. Yeah, it's dumb money. So the higher this goes, it's bubbly. That's all I'll say. It's bubbly. Not for you, except for my chat though. They're all savvy. They got it figured out. Did you see the poly market on the Democratic presidential nominee? A little early for this, but let's take a gander. Let's take a squeak at this. Right now, the leader by 4% is Praige Biden. We all just praise one more shot for Joe Biden. I just feel like it's so f***ed up that he doesn't get one more shot. Come on, bro. He's young. He's scrappy. Gavin Newsom, my close personal friend, a man who calls on me when he needs advice, is at 21%. AOC right behind it, 17%. Buttigieg, aka Booty Judge, at 13%. And Josh Shapiro, 6.6%. This is going to change so dramatically by 2028. So this is kind of too early to call. In fact, if there was like, you could bet the field, I would probably take it. I would make a long shot bet it's nobody on this list. Stephen A. Smith? Stephen A. Smith would be horrendous president. I gotta say it early, I gotta say it often. Stephen A. Smith would be a horrendous president. Would be a truly terrible president. And also, LeBron would end up in a concentration camp or something. So he's funny like Trump, so good enough. That's America's #1 bar. So I don't really care about your politics. You just better be funny up there. I'd have a beer with him. Would you? I think a beer with Stephen A. Smith wouldn't even be that fun. Chris Pratt, let's go. Make America great again. I think Chris Pratt should run for president of Italy, prime minister of Italy, because he's a true Italian. I think he should run with the Mario accent. And then once he wins that, he can reestablish American-Italian relations. Yeah, then Japan. He should go to Italy, win there, then go to Japan, win there. We just send Chris Pratt on a tour around the world, winning in different elections and reuniting with America. Our alliances. Call me Big A the way I'm single-handedly stopping the Epstein files from being released. What? Why would you call yourself Big A for that? Are you implying that I am single-handedly stopping the Epstein files from being released? As in everybody, the Democrats, the Republicans, Trump, MAGA, they all actually want it released and I'm the one stopping it?
Death, it's a little complicated because there are many different kinds of death.
Oh.
You can have societies dying, cities dying, companies dying, but what we're talking about is the death of the individual. There's a peculiar paradox there because while you're alive, I mean, right now, millions of cells in you are dying. You don't even notice that. That's cell death. You start aging even in utero. From the time you're conceived, your fertilized egg starts developing.
Is that why all children are born looking like old men?
This is Star Talk. Neil deGrasse Tyson, your personal astrophysicist. This is special edition, which means we've got Gary O'Reilly. Gary.
Hi, Neil.
Hey. And we got Chuck Nice.
Hey.
Okay.
What's
Chuck,
happening?
And special edition specializes in all science that matters to the human condition.
Yes.
And today's topic is no exception.
No.
And may I give the title of it?
Please do.
Why We Die.
Dun, dun, dun.
Why We Die.
Yeah.
Well, I have no expertise in that other than simply being alive.
Right.
I fear death because I'm born knowing only life.
Wow, look at that.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I got that from a movie.
Oh, okay.
That's okay. So Lane and I are co-producer on this. Lane
Lane
Unsworth.
Unsworth, our LA producer
Yes.
for Star Talk. Yes.
We have long wanted to investigate this subject matter.
You want to investigate it, but not firsthand.
No. No.
You know first-hand data.
More an observation.
Right.
More an observation. So if you put it this way, humankind has for millennia asked, why do we die? Followed by, well, why can't we live forever then? And then,
It's kind of the same question.
but aren't different people. So has evolution programmed us to expire on a certain date? Could we extend the game? Cheat death, play God, if you wish. Millions, if not billions, are spent annually on anti-aging, be it research or products.
Billions of dollars.
Yes.
Okay.
And so how close are we to unlocking the mystery of death? So no surprise that the research into proteins is proving to be the key to this mystery.
So the building blocks of life may hold the key to death?
How about that?
Oh, good sentence there. Very good, Chuck. So we have the world's expert on this very subject.
Wow.
And this is Venki Ramakrishnan. Venki, welcome to Star Talk.
Thank you.
Excellent. And you are now based in Cambridge?
Yes.
England. Say it.
I knew you had to fix that.
Wasn't really necessary.
It's always Basher Brit Day here.
Yeah, it is. It is. But we do it lovably.
We do, yeah.
So you run a small group, but used to be bigger because you're winding down
Yes.
in your career. A program leader at the MRC
That stands for Medical Research Council.
lab at Cambridge.
Yes.
And it specializes in
Molecular biology.
molecular biology.
So it's the MRC lab of molecular biology.
Okay. But
Our name is what we do.
But that's like the least of your resume here. So in 2009, you were awarded the Chemistry Nobel Prize.
Wow.
Why?
Are you wearing it under your shirt right now?
No.
Because that's serious blank.
Yeah,
You know?
'cause honestly,
You go to the club.
Yeah, I would be like the Flavor Flav of Nobel Prize winners. I would never take it off.
So, former president of the Royal Society, very important
That's a deal.
organization that basically the first in the world to organize the ideas and publications of scientists.
Wow.
To make it a clearinghouse of peer review. Really.
First peer-reviewed papers. Also, it advocated evidence-based science in the 17th century at a time when authority mattered a lot. And they said authority doesn't matter. Beauty doesn't matter. It's evidence that
Yes,
matters.
very enlightened and important posture. And then you got knighted in 2012. That's 3 years later. And did they knight with an actual sword?
Yes, but I think it's blunt.
Well, let's just hope.
Yeah.
You don't want them to slip up.
Right.
If there's a little sort of jiggle in the wrist.
We wanted to make him a knight. It turned into an execution.
So who was on the other end of the sword?
Yes.
It was Princess Anne.
Oh, cool.
Cool.
All right.
Yeah, we love
We like
Princess
that.
Anne.
Yeah, that'll work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, also, you have a book. It's your second book, first one a few years back, The Gene Machine. But what we're especially interested in now is Why We Die. And give me the subtitle of that book, Why We Die.
It's called The New Science of Aging and the Quest for Immortality.
Well, let's dive right in because you are our world's expert in this. And before we can define death, I guess we should kind of define life and then learn what it is that ceases in life that then brings death upon it.
Well, defining life is very hard. It's, you could almost say, quote Justice Potter Stewart, as I can't define it, but I know it when I see it.
Spoken of, maybe you don't know.
Pornography.
Because that's America. That he said that of pornography.
But fact is, life, most biologists would define it as a system that can self-replicate and evolve. And at least in our world, it's carbon-based. But when we talk about death, it's a little complicated because there are many different kinds of death.
Oh.
You can have societies dying, cities dying, nations dying. You can have companies dying. But what we're talking about is the death of the individual, which has a...
The organism.
Of an individual animal or organism, right? And there's a peculiar paradox there because while you're alive, I mean, right now, millions of cells in you are dying. You don't even notice that, okay? That's cell death.
Why you got to tell me that right now?
And no,
Because it's fact.
they need to die in order to keep you alive. Okay?
Oh, look at that.
That's how he got out of that.
Thank you,
Okay.
dead cells.
So
To
that's
make room
one
for the new cells.
to make room for new cells. Actually, during development, cells will die at precise points during development. They've done their bit, and then they have to get out of the way.
When you say development, you mean embryonic.
Embryonic development, correct. And at the same time, when you die, when you say a person has died, at the point of death, most of you is still alive. That's why you can donate organs.
Right.
Okay.
So there's the other side of the paradox.
Interesting.
So what do we mean by
By
death?
death, you're right.
Okay. You can have. By the way, since you're an astrophysicist, you can have death of the universe as well, and there's a book coming out on that, or has come out. So the question is, what do we mean when an individual dies? What we mean is the irreversible loss of that individual's ability to function as a coherent whole. So that means that person can no longer exist as a unit. And that's what we mean by death.
And are you talking physiologically this person cannot function as a unit? Because there are people who experience brain death or to an extent, and they keep them on a respirator because a family member says, I don't want them to die.
So there are two examples coming out of Chuck's point. You can be brain dead, but sustained on a respirator, so all your organs are working. Or you can be body dead, I suppose, and in the limit, it's like your brain in a jar or whatever.
Well, that's more like a
It can't happen.
But that's more like a quadriplegic.
What you said can't happen because if your body's dead, then it can't feed nutrients to the brain to keep it alive. The brain is the biggest consumer of
Resources.
resources in the body. So coming back to your point, though, about brain death, et cetera, that's interesting because it used to be that if your heart stopped beating, that was the moment people said you're dead.
Right.
Then they found out that actually, even if your heart stops beating, they can resuscitate you.
Right.
But then they decided, okay, when you no longer have brain waves and your brain has irreversibly stopped, that's brain death. And there's an interesting case. States in the U.S. used to have different definitions of death. And there was a case where somebody died in California, but her relatives wouldn't accept it. And by New Jersey laws, she was not dead. So they moved the body to New Jersey.
Oh, wow.
And she was maintained, as you say, on some sort of artificial device. And then eventually she died. But this is slightly getting semantic because most people agree that there's a point when the body cannot reverse itself and get back to being alive.
Yeah, but that's a statement of the limits of medicine in the day.
Today.
Right.
Correct.
So I remember, I read this, that one of the definitions of death is if you do not fog a mirror held up to your mouth.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking...
That's respiratory.
Yeah, that was a long time.
I'm thinking, I'm glad that's not when I'm alive. I'm just thinking, thank you for...
Right. Thanks for not being alive back then. Because I'm a light sleeper.
Okay, so that tells me that however real our current definitions feel about when someone dies, could be modified in the near or distant future.
Absolutely. And neither birth nor death are very clearly defined. And I've pointed this out, that they're both somewhat fuzzy. I mean, when is it that you actually are you at birth? And that's the whole argument about abortion and all of that is just about that. And similarly, the point of death is also
When are you
a
no
little
longer
fuzzy.
you?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah.
So the bit in between is aging.
The bit in between is aging. And unfortunately for us,
the little bit in between.
Yeah, I may have
your whole life.
I may have downplayed that bit. Okay.
and in fact, you start aging even in utero.
Interesting.
From the time you're conceived,
Yeah.
you know, your fertilized egg
But
starts
that's
developing.
Is that why
Earlier-
all children are born looking like old men?
Like Winston Churchill. No. So that's even earlier than a loaf of bread. Because you know when a loaf of bread starts aging,
No.
right when you take it out of the oven.
Yes, exactly.
Well, okay.
In that moment, it starts getting old.
Right.
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 But here,
This is in the oven.
in the oven, you're getting old. Okay.
Look at that.
Forgive me as an astrophysicist, I hear talk of cells but then I also hear talk of proteins. So could you distinguish the two of them for me with regard to the role of aging?
So aging is, you can think of aging as an accumulation of damage and changes to our molecules, our cells, our tissue, and entire organs and the body. And this aging occurs at every one of those levels. So if you think of the molecule that holds all the information necessary to make all of the other molecules in the cell, that's our genes, our DNA. So DNA can be damaged. It can also change, which is not exactly damaged, but it can be modified as we age, typically by adding chemical groups to it, often methyl groups.
Is gene editing?
It's epigenetics.
Yes.
It's not editing as such. It's not changing the bases. It's not changing the letters of the DNA.
That would be gene
What's on
editing.
top?
That would be gene editing.
Okay.
This is epigenetics, which means sort of on top of genetics.
Like the epicenter of
Of a
an earthquake is the point on our surface above where the
Right.
yeah.
And so you can modify DNA, and that changes the way in which the program is expressed. So which genes are translated into protein.
So this is the
and
playing
which
God
aren't.
part because now you are changing the
No, we're
Well,
not
that
doing
just
anything.
happens.
This
So
is happening.
Yeah.
This is
Okay.
happening even in utero.
Experiential circumstances can change your epigenetics.
Is this the
So it's part
translational
of-
control of
It's just
proteins?
part of life. And it evolved for probably a very good reason. Mainly, it may have been a cancer prevention mechanism early in life. We can get into why we have death from an evolutionary point of view. But nevertheless, the DNA program itself ages. You know, damage and modifications change the nature of the genes that you're expressing. Then that results in the proteins, which are encoded by DNA.
there you go.
These are the workhorses of the cell. They carry out all the function. They give the cell its structure. Almost everything you think of as a property of life, like vision or touch or or antibodies, they're all proteins, and they're all encoded by DNA. But as we get older, the quality of the proteins deteriorates. They're not made at the right time and the right amount. They start aggregating. Alzheimer's is a case where proteins clump up together and form tangles.
In the brain,
So that also, in the brain. So that also is a consequence of age. And as a result, things in the cell, larger entities like compartments in the cell, also start to age. One of them are mitochondria, mitochondria were actually bacteria that were swallowed up by a larger cell 2 billion years ago and then lived in symbiosis. And now, today, mitochondria are specialized as the centers for energy metabolism. It's where oxygen is used to burn sugar effectively and get energy out of it.
So it's that kind of chemistry going that far back that accounts for our genetic similarity to life forms that are nothing like us. Like we're something like 25% identical genes to a banana.
Yes. all eukaryotes came out of that,
Yes.
out of that symbiosis.
Okay.
And so you can think of this as an ancient, organelle that's now specialized, and because it's a center for oxygen usage, it can create what are called free radicals or reactive oxygen species, because these are partially reduced oxygen atoms which are chemically very reactive. So you can have a lot of damage.
Just to be clear, if it's fully reduced, that means all the oxygen is where
it
could
becomes
fit,
water.
and then you can't. There's nothing else that can
Carbon
happen to it.
dioxide and water is what you get.
Yes, it's fully reduced. Partially, it's basically activated
It's activated.
to
Correct.
do things,
And it does
chemically.
damage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it can cause damage. And mitochondria have preserved a little bit of their own genome. They used to have a much larger genome when they were bacteria, but now that genome has shrunk. In humans, they only encode 13 protein genes, but they're essential for the function of mitochondria. And the mechanism to replicate that DNA, to copy that DNA as mitochondria divide, it's not as accurate as the mechanism for our own DNA replication. The more errors creep in. And so mitochondrial aging is a big problem with our aging.
Is that the single point of failure in terms of
It's
the
not
aging?
a single point. I think aging,
He's blaming
people
it on
might argue.
mitochondria.
Yeah.
Someone's got to be blamed.
Like aging is like a cascade failure.
But I do like to say that the reason my grandson has a lot more energy than I do is because he has much better mitochondria than I do.
Something's going on with the mitochondria for your skin, because your skin's perfect. I don't know how old you are, but clearly I look at your hair and I'm like, okay, this guy's old. But but I look at your skin, I'm like, but he stole his skin off of a teenager.
I thought black don't crack,
That's true. Black don't crack.
and then it
Yeah.
includes,
I think it's,
Yeah.
you're absolutely
the
right.
subcontinent.
It does make a difference.
It's the dark skin.
It's the dark skin.
Yeah, it's just melanin.
Yeah, that's just
At
melanin.
the end of the day.
Okay.
Oh, so this reduced chemistry that makes it chemically active, that could not have been useful before Earth's atmosphere became oxygen rich.
That's right.
So
And that happened because of the cyano what?
yeah. So cyanobacteria basically turned a carbon dioxide atmosphere into one that had a presence of oxygen, and then anything that needs oxygen can
thrive.
Can now thrive, but it couldn't before then.
That's
so that helps age date, or time date, I should say. So
It's
that
about 2 billion years.
that helps time date these activities. Yeah.
So that's the
Interesting.
watershed moment for.
Oh, very good.
Yeah,
welcome.
look at you.
Watershed.
I like that. That was good.
All right. So there's something called senescent cells where they age and they secrete these sort of inflammatory
Yeah,
compounds.
so senescent cells are another. I mean, I said you can have aging at every level,
Yes.
and aging at a cellular level is often due to senescence. And senescence is interesting. It may have evolved originally as a anti-cancer mechanism or as a mechanism to get rid of defective cells.
Yeah.
So what happens is, if a cell gets DNA damage, it has a number of enzymes to repair the damage, to sense and repair the damage. But if the damage is too extensive, then it triggers pathways to either kill the cell, commit suicide, or to send it into this state called senescence.
Yeah.
That can also happen, due to other kinds of stresses. And what senescent cells do is they no longer function normally, and they no longer divide, but they secrete inflammatory compounds. And the purpose is to signal to the immune system that there's something wrong here, and come and repair the damage around the site. Maybe it's a wound or an infection or
They
something.
call the cavalry.
And exactly, call the
So
cavalry.
it has utility.
It has
until it doesn't.
utility early in life,
Until it doesn't.
but later in life, you get too many of these events.
Right.
Build-up of senescent cells, systemic inflammation, which causes organ damage, more senescence. And so it's a big problem in aging.
Wow. Yeah, and that's why you see so many medical reports now that talk about the dangers of inflammation.
Absolutely.
Totally. Like, it doesn't make a difference what kind of inflammation. The idea is to eliminate inflammation as much as you can, no matter what.
Sure. And actually, people know, for example, in the COVID pandemic, the cause of death is often triggered by inflammation,
Right.
not by necessarily directly by the virus.
by the
itself.
virus
It's
itself.
our reaction
So
to
it's
the
the
virus.
reaction. So it's the cytokine storm that was created as a reaction to the virus itself.
Cytokine? What-
Cytokine.
Please explain.
Cytokines are, if I'm not mistaken.
Or we can get him to answer.
Oh, can you answer that? Yeah, because I'm not an expert.
I'm not,
That was low.
I'm not an
That was
immunologist
low.
either, but
But yeah, it's, the cytokines are what's released when we respond to what our body thinks is an attack on us. And,
Goes into
And
overdrive.
sometimes he goes in overdrive.
and it goes in overdrive. And, yeah.
Are we anywhere close to being, or is this the epigenetics thing where we can deal with these senescent cells?
no, but there is a new field emerging, which is cellular reprogramming.
Ooh, yeah. That sounds
So-
sexy.
To explain that, if you start from a single fertilized egg, it divides into many cells, becomes something called a blastula, and then or a blastocyst, and then it divides further and further, and then forms specialized stem cells, and each of those specialized stem cells give rise to certain kinds of tissues.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, so some stem cells will only generate cells of the blood system, including white blood cells, red blood cells, and so on. That used to be thought of as unidirectional. You can't go backwards. You can't go back from a skin cell back to a fertilized egg or an early embryo. But that turned out not to be true. Okay, and actually, it was done in a natural way when Dolly the sheep was cloned, but actually even earlier when John Gurdon cloned the skin cell of a frog and cloned an entirely new animal from it.
Wow.
And that meant that somehow these marks on the DNA had been erased or changed.
Just historically, that completely changed the public dialogue about our source of stem cells
Right.
because we only were getting them from aborted
From
fetuses.
blood, yeah.
From fetuses.
From
right.
fetuses.
From fetuses.
Yeah.
And so that was a complicated ethical issue for many people.
Right.
And then once that blew open that whole field.
Right. Well, that wasn't Gurdon and Dolly the sheep and others, but it was actually Shinya Yamanaka, a Japanese scientist, who showed that if you were to introduce just 4 factors, these are genes for proteins that regulate other genes.
Gotcha.
If you were able to introduce those 4 factors, you could take a fully differentiated cell, like a skin cell or a
heart
liver
cell.
cell or a heart cell, and you could make it go backwards in development all the way back to what's called a pluripotent stem cell. Pluripotent means it can make any tissue.
Right.
And so that eliminated the need for what you said. Which
Did he
is
not win a
getting-
Nobel for that as well?
He better
did,
had.
did.
Yeah,
He
he
and
did,
John
yeah.
Gurdon shared a Nobel Prize. And here's an interesting thing. John Gurdon's paper for which he won the Nobel Prize was published the year Shinya Yamanaka was born.
No.
Wow.
That's how far
That's how
apart they
far
are in
apart
age.
they are. And all that time, all that work, and then he just comes along and takes credit for it. Now, look at that. Would
But
you
we've-
look at that?
We've had sort of variations of this with David Sinclair, who we've had as a guest, took mice that were blind.
Correct.
It sounds like a nursery rhyme.
Right.
3 of them.
The-
were-
the-
three of them.
Don't start. You did it, didn't you?
Goddamn.
You couldn't
Somebody
help.
had to go there.
You did.
Go.
And turned them into sight, cured their blindness.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if that's the case, how
Yeah,
far
I
are we
wouldn't-
from...
I would say it's early days.
Yeah.
Fine.
that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can tell you that I'm aware that this has happened, and then my question is just the distance between this and doing other things on a grander scale. Mice
Yeah.
are one thing, larger primates are
Yeah,
certainly another.
and curing blindness.
It's a little further down the line, is what you're saying. It's a little, but the idea is we do have. Would you say we now have not a blueprint, but maybe a template that we know we can take these programming cells and use them to maybe change our makeup.
I think the biggest use of that is in something called regenerative medicine, where if you want to replace tissue that normally can't be replaced, for example, damaged heart muscle in a heart attack, or pancreatic tissue which has been destroyed and you have diabetes, or cartilage for example,
Very
for
good. Yeah.
osteoarthritis.
Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe one day I'm hoping even hair. So if you can,
It looks good on you, though. Very few people can pull this off. Okay.
anyway, so if you can do that, the regenerative medicine is a huge area of research.
Yeah.
And they're making good progress in some things.
Just to be clear, I've always been disappointed in humans for not being able to regenerate limbs the way newts do.
Exactly.
I'm thinking,
That's because newts have stem cells all over
All over their body?
all over
their whole
body.
makeup. I'll
Yeah,
say.
it's spread out throughout, and so they can.
I'm just
or
saying,
starfish, for example.
we're old enough to remember reading biology books. Humans are the top of the evolutionary, back when we spoke that way.
Unless you lose an arm.
Unless you,
Well,
I went through the list of all the other animals that do things way better than we do, and I quickly
Yeah. It's not a short
Also,
list.
it's humbling to know that we have about the same number of genes as a worm or a weed.
Right.
So
Yeah, there you go.
Let's put us in our place.
yeah.
anyway, but going back to stem cells, the thing with aging is, can you take a fully grown or an aged individual, apply these kinds of factors, and get their tissues or their stem cells to be regenerated?
Right.
Because one problem with aging is that our stem cells also age.
Right.
They decline in number and in quality. So if you were able to use a method that would somehow either rejuvenate tissue or actually regenerate stem cells, that would be a big thing. And people have done experiments to do this kind of thing in mice. And they say that the papers report that the mice look healthier, they seem younger by many criteria and so on. But how to do this safely?
And the bald mice, did they get hair back?
No, but their fur looked better.
Oh, okay.
Okay. That's not bad.
So the question is, how can you do this in humans in a way that's safe, that doesn't cause cancer, that is at the right dose, and so on?
Right.
And that's a big challenge.
That
so
is.
I think it's promising, but like many of these things, the aging field, I should say, is full of hype. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's very promising, but there's a lot of work to be done before it's ready for prime time.
Are we at this sort of Frankenstein moment? I mean, you've done a Frankenstein show before with, let me get his name right, David Andrzejewicz. The cells, you've said there can be death to the organism, but cells will remain alive. And now we've got the Yamanaka factors. Are we getting to that thing when we can create, or are we just fantasy talking here?
You mean create a new individual? Or the same individual?
Well, the same individual.
You could certainly clone yourself.
Right.
That's theoretically and practically possible. They've cloned all kinds of mammals. There's no reason why they can't clone a human being, except that all countries have decided that's a bad thing to do. But that's not the same as rejuvenating or the same
Reprogramming,
individual.
Right. Which, by the way, for selfish purposes, rejuvenation is a hell of a lot better than cloning, because that clone is not me.
Exactly. That's exactly. People forget that.
Yeah. And there's all this fantasies in the multiverse where you have an infinite number of possible molecular outcomes
Right.
of all organisms. They're imagining themselves in another universe, in a way being reincarnated and living forever. It's
Right.
like, no, that's a different
No, that's
person.
just a different person in a different
And,
timeline.
and by the way, these transhumanists, people who think that they're going to dump their brain into a computer
right.
and then maintain their consciousness, a simple question to ask is, what if you make 2 copies of it? Which one's the real you? And you immediately have a paradox.
Absolutely.
The copies that you make will be of you of that moment, but you've in your timeline are still proceeding.
Yeah.
They would be stuck
You still
within
get to
that
go to the
particular-
beach and have friends, and your brain in a jar does not. Right.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Or your brain in the silicon chip.
Right.
Is you from whenever it was you created it.
So I heard long ago, and I checked it out, and I think it's true, that all mammals live for about the same number of heartbeats, except for humans who live 2 or 3 times that. Except if you go back far enough in time when we were just living in caves, we were right with all the rest of the mammals.
Yeah.
So first, is that true? Second, there are animals, not mammals, that live much longer than we do. I'm thinking of the Galapagos tortoise, for example.
Yeah.
So do you guys study other animals to get insight?
So there is a whole field devoted to looking at lifespan of different species. And you are right that, at least among mammals, Jeffrey West, who's written a book called Scale, shows that the number of heartbeats is roughly the same. That has to do with the fact that smaller animals have a higher metabolic rate.
Right.
They have a faster metabolism, and they almost need to because their surface to volume ratio is larger. They dissipate heat more.
We did
So
a
they-
whole explainer on
Yes, we did.
surface to volume ratios.
and so
life.
they need to maintain a higher metabolic rate. That's one of the reasons.
Well, that's only one of the reasons why they have higher heart rate. That's not a reason why they should die sooner.
The why we should die sooner has an evolutionary explanation, and that is evolution doesn't care how long you live. It only cares about fitness. Fitness in the biological sense is the likelihood that you're going to be able to successfully pass on your genes.
And people always misinterpret that as being physically fit or
right.
stronger or whatever.
Survival
Yeah.
of the fittest,
Right,
as in,
right.
I'm in great shape.
Yeah, Darwin should have found a different word.
He
for
should,
that.
yeah.
So evolution cares about fitness. Now, at the same time, for most of our history, and certainly the history of all other species, resources are limiting. And so you have to select. Do you put more of your resources into maintenance and repair of the individual animal, or do you put it into growth and reproduction? There's always a balance if you have limited energy. So in the case of a mouse, which lives about 2 years in the wild, there's no sense in having a mouse live for 40 years because long before that, it's going to be eaten.
Yep.
Exactly. You beat me to it. Or it'll die of starvation or a drought or something. And so in the case of a mouse, evolution has favored selection of a species that grows very quickly and reproduces prolifically. That's a mouse. If you get to a large animal like a bowhead whale, let's take an even bigger than an elephant, they can live for 200-300 years, and they have a very relatively slow metabolism.
Wow.
An even slower metabolism is not a mammal, but it's still a vertebrate called the Greenland shark, 700 years.
What?
Listen to that. Yeah.
A vertebrate living for 700 years, very slow metabolism.
Wait. How do you know that? We didn't even have marine biology 700 years ago. So how do you,
They can do things like carbon dating and they look
They
at the
cut one
tissues
open, it
and
was
so
with
on.
700 rings inside. I mean, you've got on the
okay,
scale.
I'm just
No.
weird.
So you've got the mayfly lives a day,
Mayfly lives a day,
right?
exactly.
And then between that, you've gone from there to a Greenland shark. And your Galapagos
And there are
tortoise is
actually
in
other
there.
animals that are thought not to even age biologically.
What's the immortal
like
jellyfish?
the hydra and the immortal jellyfish. These things
Wait,
have
there's an actual
they're-
animal called the Hydra?
Yes, that's right.
Awesome.
Not just in
Not just in G.I. Joe?
No, in,
Oh, no, Marvel.
no, in Greek
mythology.
legend, in
Yeah.
mythology.
Oh, you
Exactly.
mean the real Hydra?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
This is a freshwater small animal. And they're full of stem cells, so they're constantly regenerating themselves. But if you followed an individual, it would also age only very slowly. It's just in the wild, it dies for other reasons before actually aging. So there's a whole range. Now,
So humans
here's
might be the only species that dies of natural causes in the world. I mean, if you want to think about it
it's
that way.
possibly, you know,
We're apex predator.
yeah.
So
Yeah, I think that may be true. In fact, there's a book written by Stephen Ostad called Methuselah's Zoo, where he talks about all these animals. And he
love
talks
that
about
title.
Methuselah's Zoo.
love it.
And
it's a great book.
So that reminds me, because Methuselah is the oldest person in the Bible,
Right.
In the
Old Testament.
Bible, the oldest star we know of in our galaxy is called Methuselah.
It's called Methuselah.
Yeah,
Right.
So Methuselah had a lot of influence.
Yeah. And
on
that
culture.
star, too, is lying about its age.
Who knew that?
Anyway, in this book, he points out,
Methuselah Zoo.
in Methuselah's Zoo, he points out how all these species have such different lifespans. And it's because of this evolutionary selection, but it's actually worse than that. The fact is, evolution will select for things that help you early in life, even if they cause a problem later in life. So many of the things that cause aging are related to growth, for example, or to cancer prevention, prevention or senescent cell creation. These things all help us early in life, and they're a problem later in life. But evolution doesn't care what happens to you when later in
When
life.
you're not making babies.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because that's the
Exactly.
whole deal.
So, what helps us survive in infancy and then go on to reproduction is the key component of our decline and demise.
Not always, not
Okay.
everything, but there are things that happen to us early in life that are selected for early in life that cause aging.
So the real deal is just keep having babies your entire life, and then you'll never age. However, you will eventually kill yourself because of these kids.
So we're an outlier. We're an outlier. We live about twice as long
Twice as long.
as we would based on our size.
But only post caveman life, right? Because if
Yeah,
half of
40,000 years.
Exactly. So
yeah.
half of everyone died by 30.
Yeah.
And so we're not 2x other mammals at our size, right?
Yeah. And one last thing is there's a group of mammals, the bats. They live much longer. They're about the same size as a mouse in terms of mass.
Yeah.
Your fleeter mouse.
They live about 10 or 20 times as long as a mouse. And the reason is they can fly around. So that means two things. They can escape predators more easily.
Right.
And they can also forage over a much wider area for food. And when they roost in the ceilings of caves, so they're not
safe.
as accessible to predators.
They've been designed to survive longer.
And so there it's worth it for evolution to make them live longer because they'll still keep producing more babies.
Yeah, so you got to be Grandpa Munster. Is basically the deal. That's what you.
Grandpa from the Munsters.
The grandpa
Yeah,
from the Munsters
yeah,
if
yeah.
you want to live long. Sleep hanging upside down, away from predators.
So, if we're looking at aging, we all do it, can't help it, more or less. What have been the attempts to reverse the aging? I'm not talking potions and lotions here. So, let's go through the laundry list. The sort of young blood transfusion.
Oh, yeah.
How successful has that been?
It's not incredibly successful, but the science underlying it is solid. If you connect an old rat with a young rat,
Yeah.
by that I mean you connect them so that their
transfusion.
blood systems
Right.
are
Sharing the
joined.
same circulation system.
Exactly. Then it turns out that the old animal benefits from the blood of the young animal, but even more so, the young animal suffers from the blood of the old animal.
Wow.
And so this means there are factors in blood that change as we age.
There's
And
such a thing as old blood.
exactly, or young blood. And that's why
Young
I
blood.
call it this vampire blood.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's the science. And the research is now about finding out what these factors are, what they do. And once you know that, you might be able to figure out whether you can use them to our benefit. But people have not waited for that. What's happened is the very first time these people from Stanford, Rando and others published this, they got creepy phone calls from rich people asking
Like
where they
Keith
could get
Richards.
blood. And and companies started sprouting up, getting blood from young donors and extracting the plasma and selling them up, at $8,000 a pint or something to, rich old people. And one of them, the FDA wanted to shut it down, and then they sprouted up under a different name. And the whole thing was like the Wild West. But there's real science under it, and that's an ongoing area.
Okay, stem cells we've kind of addressed as to how you can, through the Yamanaka factors,
Yeah.
dial up, dial
Yeah,
down.
and I would consider that.
Yamanaka,
What is the Yamanaka factor?
the Oscar-winning, where he sort of can
Nobel
dial back.
Oscar winning?
Yes, Oscar-winning. He was a bloody good actor. He's an unbelievably good actor. Nobel Prize winner.
Exactly.
Thank
Okay,
you.
that guy. Right, that guy. Thank
Yes,
you. Okay.
the Nobel
You
Prize
get your
winning
prizes straight
Yamanaka.
here. Okay.
The calorific caloric restriction,
Yeah, so
which is basically fasting.
It is.
it is. So lots of experiments, starting in mice, but now also in flies, worms, even in single-celled animals like yeast. If you reduce the amount of calories, it turns out that you can, the animals live longer, but more importantly, older animals start resembling younger animals in terms of their physiology and their biomarkers. And so the question is, can you mimic caloric restriction? And it turns out that there are many important biochemical pathways that are affected by caloric restriction. One of them is the IGF-1 insulin, growth hormone factor.
Yeah.
So it's
But just to be clear, what you're saying, you wouldn't have to imitate calorie reduction. You could just consume fewer calories. So what
Yes.
you're trying to do is, we can still eat our cheeseburgers and the blueberry pie dessert, and then you hijack what would be the starvation mechanism biochemically.
exactly.
That's,
Intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
but I don't have to fast.
Is this the
That's the
GLP-1
whole
drug?
Oh, yeah, the whole point is not to fast, just to restrict. Yeah.
No. Did you get what I just said?
No.
What he's saying, that's why I paused on
Saying,
Okay.
have your cake and eat
Say
it.
it
You
again.
have your cake
And eat it too.
Yeah.
Yes. and
But explain your point again, because I missed it.
Okay, so the point is, what he said, he just slipped it in.
Right.
But I caught him.
Okay.
All right.
He's saying
I've actually-
fasting will prolong your life.
Absolutely.
So can we find a way to mimic the biochemistry of that in your body?
We can.
And the word mimic in that sentence means still eat the cheeseburger.
Right.
But do what the fasting would have done to your biochemistry.
I see what. Yes.
That's
Have your cake and eat
But you're
it.
doing it artificially, is what you're saying. Okay.
In my book, I call it eating your blueberry pie and ice cream and getting the benefits of
Yes. And
Okay.
still getting the benefits.
Wait, so have we
so-
done this?
No, well, there are
He's
some
working on
drugs.
it.
Okay.
No, I'm not working on it.
He's like,
I should say,
I'm
you know,
out this game.
I should say,
He was like, did you see?
Yeah, the way he said
Vanky,
it.
the way he just went like this. No, not me. Hey, they keep trying to keep me working. I'm telling you right now, I'm out.
But if you do know how to do it, tell Chuck because he'll set up a company.
Certainly.
there are lots of companies. That's a problem. So anyway, one of the drugs that does this is called rapamycin. It's the darling of the anti-aging.
This is the
research
Easter
community.
Island find, isn't it? Didn't they
Easter
find-
Island.
Yes.
Easter Island
Okay,
is
someone's
where
got
it
to
was found.
connect these.
Yeah,
two for me here.
rapamycin. Okay, let's
So
do it. Let's-
rapamycin was found in the soil of Easter Island, from bacteria in the soil of Easter Island that produced this compound, which turns out to be an antifungal compound. And then they found out that it may have some properties against cancer. And then eventually they found out that it actually is an immunosuppressor. And that's what made it get FDA approval as an immunosuppressive drug. Then, much later, it was found in a completely different place. It was found that it shuts down a major pathway in the cell. And that pathway is related to it's a pathway that senses nutrients. So it's related to caloric restriction. People then said, okay, let's see what happens if you give rapamycin to mice and so on. And mice lived a bit longer, seemed a bit healthier. However, rapamycin is an immunosuppressive drug. So it's going to make you more prone to
being sick.
infections.
Like steroids.
And it has other side effects as well.
Okay.
So the question they have is, can you adjust the dosage so you get the benefits against aging without the problems of immunosuppression and so on? And that's still, jury's still out on that.
Yeah.
Okay, now there's also relativity where you can slow down time for yourself.
Oh, well, that's going into space, though.
Yeah, well, right.
That's one way to defeat aging,
Yeah,
right? It could be-
However, you are still aging.
Right.
In your own body, 1 second per second.
Right.
The difference is all your friends are aging faster than you.
Much faster.
Right. So you're not going to live older than you would have as an organism.
Right.
You'll just live longer than everybody else.
Exactly.
Isn't that the
And then
Kelly,
when you return, all your friends would have been dead.
They'll be dead.
the Kelly twins, where they did the experiment
Oh,
once?
yes. We had one of them on this program.
Yes.
Scott Kelly,
Right.
astronaut who went up.
That's right.
And
his brother stayed here.
Brother stayed here. They're identical twins. And you can calculate how much younger one would have been. It's like a fraction of a second. They weren't.
That's what he gained. he gained half a second, huh?
Go to space.
Does it show?
So
Does it show?
yeah. Does it show? Excellent.
I don't remember the fraction, but it was. They were not going so fast that the speed of light.
That is the
time
definition
dilation.
of sibling rivalry.
Yeah. The most expensive anti-aging regimen ever.
So, as you surely know, in physics, we speak of this thing called entropy, where left to itself, a system will always degrade to lowest energy, highest disorder. And
The key is left to itself.
yes, yes. So we can create any manner of complexity on Earth because we're not a closed system. We're open to the sun. So the sun is gaining entropy by helping us out. Eventually, it's going to die and nothing's going to help it.
Right.
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 So do you guys in molecular biology think of entropy?
There's no question that entropic forces exist. But of course, living systems all use external energy to keep it alive.
Yes.
Right.
And part of the energy is used to do this maintenance and repair of the damage. But it's not perfect. And so eventually, even if you keep repairing DNA damage, repairing cells, getting rid of defective cells, all of that stuff which takes energy, it's not perfect. And eventually the system gradually
because
decays. But it means it decays at different rates for different species.
Interesting. Or different parts, different systems, even within your own body.
Oh, that's something that very interesting. So if people were to analyze your different organs, they'd find that they all had different ages.
Yes.
To say someone's biological
Just to be
age
clear,
is a number.
different ages mean different time distance from its birth to its death.
Correct.
Right. Because obviously it's all physically the same age.
Yeah.
Physically,
You mean
chronologically, it's the same age.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
physiologically.
But physiologically, there are different
Yeah.
ages.
So that's-
but it doesn't make a difference because if I got an old heart and a young pancreas, I'm still going to die
by a heart issue.
by a heart
Yes.
issue.
So that was always what I suspected, that
Yeah.
people who live very long, all of their organs somehow are aging at the same rate, physiologically.
Well, I don't know if that's true, but maybe they're still aging differently. But the lead organ, the organ that's aging fastest, is still slower than other people.
Right. 'Cause
Right.
if they die, it's not going to be from that. So given what you just said, I didn't put two and two together here until just now. In the second law of thermodynamics, one of its stipulations is if you have sort of usable energy over here and you convert it into another kind of energy over here, there's always energy losses. Always. That's why you cannot make a perpetual motion machine.
Right.
All right. And so the body is all about converting energy of one kind into another. You have chemical energy in food, and you turn it into
ATP.
Yeah, exactly. Remind us about that. We all learned it in biology class. The ATP cycle, is that right?
There's ATP is adenosine triphosphate. It's a molecule with high energy bonds. So you can think of it as a universal currency, just like in our world, electricity is the universal currency. So
Yes.
you use everything converted to electricity, then you can use that for everything. And so the body uses it, so you can think of it as a kind of storable form of energy that it can use.
Right, but
throughout
it's
the
taking
cell.
energy from one. It's taking energy from one thing and
Right.
converting
Typically,
it
in
into another thing.
in our case, we're getting it from carbohydrates.
Yes.
And by burning carbohydrates,
chemical energy.
It's chemical energy.
Yeah.
So that energy is used to make ATP.
Got it. And anything else we make in our body to maintain our body temperature because we're warm-blooded, to move. So so it goes to thermal energy, kinetic energy,
Yeah.
and the
And
like.
most of those things involve ATP.
And electrical energy and
Right, for
and
your
the
brain
neurosynapse.
and your heart
Yeah, yeah,
and signaling and all that.
So I'm just saying, every time you convert from one form of energy to another, you're getting less energy than you started with.
Right.
So there is a decay in there
Yeah.
eventually.
Interesting.
And
Yeah.
so you describe this sort of implicit value of death to a species because it doesn't need you after a certain point of your fertility. We're beyond that now, and we're what we call civilized. And so there are people who want to do anything they can
To stay alive for as long as they can.
to stay alive for as long as they can. And you're in that business scientifically. What is the ethics?
I should say,
Of
my
that.
own lab has never worked on aging. I went from zero to expert in one book.
Oh, okay.
Okay. My lab works on protein synthesis, which is a central component of aging.
Yes.
But I don't actually do aging research myself.
Okay, but surely you've thought about the ethics of it.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you?
Oh,
have?
definitely, yeah.
Yes, yes.
And,
so,
and I also have no skin in the game, so that's
Okay.
Oh,
So are there
that
any-
means we can get a very a truly objective.
other than beautifully soft skin.
right. I missed that one. That was,
Yeah,
it's a
Chuck,
good
I don't want to
callback.
be ahead of you
Yeah,
on any
no,
of
that
this.
was a good callback. I like it.
chemical laws, biological laws? any in the way to stop us going from where we are now to potential immortality?
Right. So there are two issues. One is aging programmed? I mean,
Right.
are we all programmed to die?
Yes.
No, because evolution doesn't care about.
It doesn't care about us dying.
So there are genes that affect aging, but those genes don't exist in order to make us age. They were selected for some other reason,
All right.
but they happen to cause us to age. So now that we understand some of the biology of aging, you ask, can we extend that?
Yes.
And there are no physical or chemical laws that say that we have to die at 120. Okay, I mean 120 is about the record for humans.
Right.
Very few reach that.
And by the way, whenever you see a 120-year-old, they're like, I am ready to go.
Oh, I'm not sure.
It's like, don't take me to Disney
not all
World.
of them.
Take me
Not
now.
all of them.
Okay.
There was
Not
this-
all of them, but yeah.
No, there's a woman, Jean Calment, who's the record holder at 122.
Oh, she was the smoker and drinker.
She used to smoke and drink into her hundreds, and reporters after a while used to gather at our house every birthday, and one of the reporters said, "Well, see you next year, I hope." And you know what she said?
What?
She said, "Sure, why not? You look pretty good to me." So, but there's no physical or chemical law that says, at 120,
You got to go.
you got to go. There are species, as I said, that live 700 years, vertebrates. Of course, the question is, can we change our biology to make us live much longer and still keep us humans? You don't want to be a very slow metabolic animal like a Greenland shark. You still want to be human, and you still want to live much longer. Now, there are people, I would say, at the one end of the anti-aging research community, including perhaps somebody you've had on your show, who think that it is possible. You can just keep extending life, and that'll buy you enough time to do more research, and you'll extend more life.
And there's a generation that would reach the escape velocity.
Exactly.
Where the prolonging of your life is 1 year per year, and then you live forever.
Yeah. Now, I'm highly skeptical, as are most scientists in this field, because aging is a multifactorial process, and to be able to do this in a way that's safe, that's efficacious, that actually works, I think it's going to be very, very hard.
Yeah,
Certainly
but the
not impossible.
The Google software that uses AI for folding proteins, which won a Nobel Prize, if memory serves, won't that solve all your protein folding problems?
No, this is different from. I think AI will have a big influence on biology, and maybe one day it will help with things like aging.
One day, 18 months from now, sometime in the
The way it's
distant
progressing.
in the distant future of AI.
What time is it? Okay.
Let's say I'm highly skeptical, but there is no physical law. But I'd say there's also no physical or chemical law that says you can't colonize other galaxies or even Mars. And so,
Why would we want to?
Whatever Elon may say, it's not going to happen tomorrow. So I think,
And I think we should get down here kind of worked out first.
Yeah,
I'm
there's a lot-
sorry, but
let's solve our own problems.
Yeah, why don't we
Yeah.
make this place habitable?
All right, so what happens the day we as chiefs escape velocity? What happens to civilization?
I think before that, a number of things will happen. For example, more people may live to be 100 or well into their 90s or early hundreds. That itself will cause a huge shift in society. For example, fertility rates everywhere are dropping. And so what you're going to have is a
It's
society.
an aging of the population.
Society where there's very little turnover. Same people are living longer and longer, very, very slow turnover. To me, that means a less dynamic and less vibrant society. If you look at the history of science or any fields, even literature, people have done their most creative work when they're young. And it's not just about physiological age. When you're young, you're looking at things fresh. You're not as opinionated. You're not dogmatic, and that allows you to think out of the box.
You have to convince the old people that they're less useful to society. How do you do that?
That's one of the reasons I'm retiring is because I decided 4 or 5 years ago to close down my lab. It's going to happen late this year, It's partly because I do believe that when you've had your time, you should step aside and let younger people carry on.
Carry on.
When Einstein was given the option to be operated on, basically on his deathbed, he said, "No, my work is done."
My work is done. Yeah, I would have said, "What kind of doctors are you? Save me."
See, the thing is, Venki, what you were talking about is inverting the population pyramid. So it goes from a small peak of aging population to a rather large one and less young people. I mean, we are basically diving down a drain here.
But what it would be? It would be more stable the
Yeah.
whole time.
More stable.
So-
Yes.
A stable thing would be good. But if the turnover is very slow and people just live for very long, I mean, as people get older, they accumulate power, they accumulate wealth, they accumulate influence. And of course, the three go together. And that then means that it's harder for younger people
to gain entrance.
to gain
Right.
entrance, to make it, and so on.
To make
And
that
of course,
way.
And that's a real problem.
sociocultural fact.
Yes.
And that's a
And you're
that's
so,
a real problem.
That's we're seeing that right now in a certain party in America where they're like, "Yo, everybody who is in charge is 80 years old. Get out of the way because we have a different way to do things and we want to get to it."
Interesting.
And so I think societies would be more stagnant and less dynamic and less creative. People will always throw exceptions at me. Oh, so-and-so was so brilliant late in life. But those are exceptions. That's not what you plan a society around.
Yeah.
But here's the problem. If somebody gave you a pill and said, this is going to give you 10 extra years of healthy life. Nobody wants to be sick for 10 years. 10 years of extra healthy life. Would you take it? I know I would.
Yes.
Okay? Almost all of us would. And this is the conflict between what we as individuals want and what's good for society.
Right.
And that's
Because at the end of those 10 years, if you're given the option again, you'll probably say yes again.
exactly.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that takes
Especially if it's healthy life.
so that thought experiment takes the larger question down to its individual parts, and you realize people really do want to live forever.
They do well because
They do. Because this is, as you say, the only life we know. It's our existence. We fear the loss of existence. And that's the
But
problem.
there's. I mean, I'm about to get philosophical. The great thing about death is that when you look at it full on and embrace it for what it is, it allows you to wake up and treat each day as something special because you know this thing is going to be over. If you take that away, I don't give a damn.
People have said that having a finite life gives you the drive, the incentive to accomplish things. Otherwise, there's always tomorrow.
There's always tomorrow.
Okay, so that is true. But at the same time, there's an old joke: who would want to live to be 100? And the answer is always someone who's 99. So you may be philosophical about death in the abstract. You don't want to die next year.
Well, no,
And
yeah,
that's the
you're
problem.
absolutely right. I don't want to die, period, because my life is pretty damn good. So, as long
And
as...
we're not talking about people who are so mortally injured or
Right.
ill
It's
that
health span.
death feels like an escape. We're talking about someone who's fully
Who's vibrant.
vibrant.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's also one aspect of aging research. If you ask most of them, they'll say, except for some of these outliers, they'll say, "Oh, we're not about extending lifespan. We're about increasing health in your life." And the idea is that you stay healthy all your life and then suddenly, crash and die. And there's a poem called "The One Horse Open Shay."
I just learned about that poem. It's the horse that. Okay.
The carriage was perfectly designed so that it wore out. All its parts wore out equally.
Exactly at the same time.
And one minute the farmer was riding along, the next minute he was on the ground surrounded by a bunch of debris because his whole carriage had
Carriage fell
collapsed.
apart.
Now that's what people are asking when you say we're going to compress the period of morbidity in old age and we're just going to suddenly decline and die. Nobody's shown that can actually happen.
Apple is working on it, believe me.
Nobody's shown that. So if they increase our health span, it's equally possible
I like that.
they
The
may
health
extend.
span. Good phrase. Not lifespan, health span.
Yeah, but if they do that, if they keep us healthy in old age, it's equally possible that they extend our lives too.
Yeah.
And that eventually we still have that slow decline.
Oh, you still have
You just reach a point where now I'm 108 and it's all falling apart, but I'm not going to die tomorrow. It's still going to be a slow,
Another
arduous
5
death
years or
5
something.
years from now.
Yeah. Of course, if we live forever, we need to find another planet because the population will continue to rise and we will outstrip the resources of Earth and possibly Mars, Venus, and any place else we search for.
That isn't quite true. For example,
What? Okay, if birth rate went to 0, then it's not a problem.
exactly.
But who
Or
wants
birth-
that?
Well, first of all, you're not going to have complete immortality. You're going to have extended lifespan. So the birth rate simply has to fall in accordance with how much you've increased your lifespan.
There you go.
And in fact, if you look at Korea, South Korea,
It's happening
Japan,
anyway.
it's happening. People are living longer, and yet the population's going down.
So, Venki, this conversation has been delightful and illuminating and enlightening. And
I can't wait to die.
You're going to have to.
And after we're done with this episode, he's going to whisper to us that he's 150. On this topic of why we die, we covered so many nuances of it. I'm left with very little to offer as a cosmic perspective. What I will say is that, speaking for myself, echoing the sentiments of others, I, at this stage in my life, value the knowledge that I will die because that gives meaning to every day that I'm alive, knowing that there's one fewer days left in my future to love, to have new ideas, to make discoveries, to embrace all that it is to be alive in this world. If you look at it mathematically, if the knowledge of death is what brings meaning to being alive, then to live forever is to live a life with no meaning at all. If you can just put off to tomorrow what you could have done today. Will I think this on my deathbed? If I'm offered a pill that can make me live another 10 years, when I'm on my deathbed, would I take that pill? I don't know. It's kind of easy to talk about death when I'm pretty sure I'm not near it in this moment. But I will say, I reserve the right to revisit the option of living a little longer when I'm on my deathbed. But for now, knowing I'm going to die is what's keeping me going. And that is a cosmic perspective. Chuck, good to have you, man.
Always a pleasure.
Gary,
Pleasure, my friend.
all there. This has been Star Talk Special Edition. Topic, Why We Die. Until next time, Neil deGrasse Tyson, your personal astrophysicist. Keep looking up.
Hello?
Help me.
What? The cord's cut.
A few weeks ago, Silent Hill fans received the most exciting news since October 2022, when Silent Hill 2 Remake was revealed and the franchise suddenly came back after years of disappearance. The news I'm talking about is obviously the announcement of remaking the original Silent Hill, which is the game that started everything back in 1999. This made it clear that Konami is serious about remaking the classics and introducing them to a new generation of players who weren't even around when the early entries saw the light. However, this triggered my curiosity to wonder whether Konami has the intention to continue the trend with every game from Team Silent, or if it will stop at a certain line. In my opinion, remaking Silent Hill 3 after the original is very likely due to the connection between the two games when it comes to narrative and storyline. But speculation becomes much more complicated when Silent Hill 4 is the topic of debate, because even though this game is from the golden age of Team Silent, the reality says that it was never seen as such, and there are several reasons behind why it's basically separate from the other three. This makes me doubt that Konami is even considering a remake for it, and I find it impossible to believe that they've already decided to include it in their future plans. Some of you might be confused about what I'm talking about, and many people probably don't understand why Silent Hill 4 is different from its predecessors. But in order to clear your confusion, I need to explain exactly what happened when the game came out 21 years ago in 2004. So in this video, I'm going to give you a quick idea of what Silent Hill 4 is all about, how people received it, and why Konami might have a problem with it. But I will also give you reasons why remaking it makes a lot of sense, regardless of Konami's opinion. So without further ado, let's start. Silent Hill 4's story is a bizarre one, and I already explained it entirely in a previous video I made, but I'll try my best to summarize the most important points. The protagonist is a man named Henry, and he lives in room 302 of an apartment building located in a city called Ashfield, which is very close to the town of Silent Hill. Over time, Henry began to feel stressed inside the place, and for some reason, paranormal occurrences became common in the apartment, making Henry's life an absolute nightmare. However, this nightmare reached its peak when Henry found himself stuck in his apartment. And when I say stuck, I mean that he literally cannot leave it. The door somehow became chained and spooky writings are all over it. But strangely enough, Henry can still see through the peephole, and he can clearly witness other residents living a normal life outside.
Oh man. Hope my luck changes before the party.
The catch is that no one can hear him or open the door, keeping him isolated from the outside world as if he's living in another dimension. Before I continue, let me highlight that this concept is among the most terrifying ideas I have ever felt in a horror game, and it's incredibly creative despite its simplicity. Initially, the game doesn't show you any monsters or visible physical threats, yet being stuck in your small apartment is enough to send chills down your spine because you actually have no clue what's going on. The creators emphasized this feeling further by adding a feature that never existed in Silent Hill games before, which is the first-person perspective. During your entire time in the apartment, the perspective shifts to first person in order to intensify your claustrophobia and allow you to live the isolation as if it's happening to you personally. Nevertheless, Henry's problems don't stop here. At some point, he discovers a mysterious hole in his bathroom wall that he never saw before. And this is where his real psychological journey begins, because this hole leads to alternate worlds where nothing makes sense. In these disturbing worlds, Henry witnesses the murders of people who are related to his apartment building in some way or another, and each one of them has a number on their bodies, making their demise seem like a part of a major plot.
I finally met him! The one the nosy guy talked about! The devil!
Well, the sinister plot really exists, and this is what you'll find out as you progress because they were all killed by the same person, and this person is none other than Walter Sullivan, a serial killer with a very complex background. This man is actually the biggest reason why I believe Silent Hill 4 deserves a remake, and to help you understand what I mean, let me explain to you his devastating story. Walter Sullivan was born in room 302, the same apartment that Henry resided in many years later and a crucial place in the game's story. The sad part, however, is that Walter was not born in a household where his parents were happy to welcome his birth, but instead, he was abandoned in the apartment as a baby, and his parents left. As a result, he was eventually found by the building's superintendent, Frank Sunderland. And for those who don't know, this man is James's father, the protagonist of Silent Hill 2. After finding the baby, he handed it to a hospital nearby, and Walter was later admitted to an orphanage. But this orphanage was not a place where he could live in peace, but rather a place where he lost his mind. The reason behind this is because the orphanage is run by the Order Cult, the crazy organization that works to promote its deranged beliefs however they can, and to brainwash whoever they see. This led Walter to get indoctrinated by them during his childhood. But at the same time, his mother was always on his mind, and he was very obsessed with her, to the extent he literally believed that room 302 was his own mother. Over the years, the idea of reuniting with his mother became central in his ideology and mindset, believing that there's a way to reunite with her beyond the natural realm.
Well, what about a mom or dad?
Yeah, but I never met him. They left South Ashfield Heights right after I was born. But soon I'll get to see my mom.
This belief was intensified further by the cult's influence, and their doctrine led him to be convinced that the only way to reach his goal was to perform a ritual called 21 Sacraments, which involved murdering 21 specific people in Ashfield and beyond. As an adult, he murdered several people in a series of grisly killings before getting arrested by police and dying in his prison cell. But the creepy side is that even after his death, he continued the ritual in the other world, existing as both a ghost and a child version. This allowed him to manipulate supernatural forces and trap people connected to room 302 or residents who lived inside it, which helped him kill them one by one. Walter's ruthlessness was boosted by the cult's teachings that refer to the world as inherently evil and see people as flawed by default. And according to them, the only solution is purification, even if it's done through extreme methods such as murder. Furthermore, the idea of his mother abandoning him developed a feeling of animosity towards women in general as he grew older. And these ideas manifested in some entities you see in the other world, including the female nurses in the hospital. Long story short, Walter is actually the main character in the game, and everything basically relates to him. Henry here is meant to witness Walter's tragic story and try to stop his deadly plan, especially since Henry himself is among the targets needed for the ritual's completion. But don't let Walter's sinister behavior and actions mislead you into believing that he's evil because he wants to be this way. The serial killer you see here is the same innocent child whose only wish was meeting his mother. But after years of abandonment, loneliness, and abuse, the child was forced to become delusional in order to cope with his suffering. In his mind, the ritual was real, and his crimes were justified because they're supposed to lead to a greater good in the end, which will help him reunite with the mother that he's dying to see. But as I said in previous videos, his delusions push you to sympathize with him because Walter is following a hope that can never become reality, and his ritual is useless from the start. But what's even more painful is that he wants to be with a mother that has no feelings for him and doesn't want him to begin with. So Walter's life has literally been misery since the day he was born. He was abandoned at birth, he doesn't know his parents, and he lived in an orphanage where mistreatment was rampant and indoctrination was the only education. even though the game has multiple endings, Walter is the only person who has no happy outcome in any of them. The protagonist Henry can reach happiness in the end, but Walter suffers in every freaking scenario. As fascinating as Silent Hill 4 can be when you dive deep into its story and details, the truth is, back in 2004, most people just weren't ready for it. The game was basically the first in the series that received major mixed reactions, and many players were outspoken about their disappointment, especially when they compared it to the previous entries. People felt that the vision was there, and the atmosphere was there, but the game in general falls short as you progress due to certain changes that they weren't happy with. If you're new to the series and you watch videos about Silent Hill 4 on YouTube, there's a high chance that your sentiments about it will be positive and you'll see it as unique and creative. But when it comes to older players who were there in 2004, many of them didn't even consider it a real Silent Hill game, and they saw the tone shift as an absolute failure. For example, the first-person perspective I praised earlier was not really a popular change when the game was released. Some fans found it confusing and didn't understand its purpose back in the day, mainly because the previous games were their standard, and first-person horror was not as common as it is today. Not only that, but the setting and the game's location were also a huge issue for many players, because they felt completely disconnected from the traditional Silent Hill experience. Even though the idea of being stuck in a haunted apartment is exciting for people today, in 2004, it was seen as a departure from Silent Hill's core identity. Keep in mind that Silent Hill 4 is the first in the series where you never visit Silent Hill Town, which means that exploring the iconic Foggy Place is not even an option here, and this was extremely disappointing for OG fans. At that time, the town of Silent Hill was more crucial than ever for players, because the hype behind its mysteries, spookiness, and creative concept was still fresh in the memory. I mean, let's not forget, the entire franchise is named after the town itself, so players naturally expect to visit Silent Hill in any game bearing its name, even if it's temporary like Silent Hill 3. And despite the town being mentioned and referenced in Silent Hill 4, its absence as a physical, explorable location left many fans with a bad taste in their mouths. What made it worse is that the alternative environments the game offered just didn't measure up for a variety of reasons. The biggest downside is that the world design was seen as incohesive and the level structure was disjointed. So instead of one connected environment, it was a series of isolated worlds, accessed through holes and portals, which eventually broke immersion for some players who loved the more grounded geography of previous entries.
The guy who lives here, what's he like anyway?
Furthermore, the constant backtracking, whether it was returning to the apartment or revisiting earlier levels, was not appreciated by players. It became even more frustrating due to the clunky companion you were forced to deal with during those segments. And speaking of clunkiness, Silent Hill 4 is the undisputed champion in clunkiness, without a shadow of a doubt. The combat here is the worst in the franchise's history, and it's a bizarre downgrade compared to Silent Hill 3, which had amazing mechanics just 1 year earlier. First of all, you need to remember that we're talking about 2004 here, and by that time video games had actually evolved enough to have more convenient controls, but Silent Hill 4 was an exception because it retained the infamous tank controls in a very horrible way. To give you a reasonable comparison, this is the combat in The Suffering, which came out in the same year as Silent Hill 4. As you can see, the combat here feels smooth and fast-paced for its generation, but when we go to Silent Hill 4, it seems like we went back 5 years in time. So in summary, the combat here is incredibly sluggish, with delayed swings, awkward targeting, and limited camera control in tight spaces, which made every battle in the game seem like a chore rather than a fun mission. With that said, people's criticisms of Silent Hill 4 don't stop there, because even the psychological side was not satisfying enough for them, and it's mostly due to the protagonist's personality. It's not even controversial to say that Henry is the most bland and generic protagonist of all time, which is why everyone tends to see Walter Sullivan as the real main character in the game, and Henry as just an observer. But to be fair, the developers have actually made it clear that Henry was intentionally designed this way because he's supposed to be normal and casual in every sense. However, fans were still not happy with this, especially since they had already fallen in love with sophisticated protagonists like James Sunderland and Heather Mason. So if we're being honest, Silent Hill 4 did really have so many flaws, and it reached a point where loyal fans refused to put it on the same level as the original trilogy. But in order to understand why remaking it is not guaranteed, we need first to understand how Konami thinks and what they feel about this game. When we talk about Konami's plans and intentions, keep in mind that they're always based on numbers, growth, and money, meaning that this company uses zero emotions when it comes to making their games. For example, the reason they remade Silent Hill 2 before anything else recently is not because the game is special from an artistic point of view, but it was mainly because they know very well that it's the most popular and there's a huge market for it. Sadly, this is when remaking Silent Hill 4 becomes much more complicated because Konami has very bad memories with this game that they have literally been trying to forget for the last 20 years. In case you don't know, back in 2004, Silent Hill 4 was the first chapter in the franchise's decline, not only quality-wise, but also financially. It's estimated that the game sold 500,000 copies worldwide, and even though this number is not horrible in the 2000s, it's still the worst number of sales compared to the previous titles. These sales gave Konami a very scary warning, indicating that fans are losing interest or momentum is starting to fade away. Konami was also not happy with the game's performance in Japan in particular, where fans were very critical of the gameplay changes after years of being consistent buyers. Not only that, but Silent Hill 4's merchandise was not making nice profits as well, which was surprising because the previous entries were known for getting attention in this area. This decline was so powerful that even the Japanese team behind the beloved franchise was entirely dismissed, and Konami decided to search for alternatives for the first time since Silent Hill's inception in 1999. This was the beginning of a disastrous era for Silent Hill, in which multiple Western studios tried to bring it back to life but failed miserably year after year. All these consequences led Konami to consider Silent Hill 4 as a failed project that should be used as an example of what they should not do in the future. And the disappointment was too heavy because they actually thought that it was the change that fans would want. But the crazy part is that fans who felt that Silent Hill 4 doesn't seem like a Silent Hill game were not entirely wrong. The game was not originally intended to be a mainline Silent Hill title, and it was initially called Room 302 because the plan was to make it as a spin-off or side project within Team Silent. The idea was to experiment with new gameplay concepts, such as being stuck in a single room and using it as a central hub. But as development progressed, Konami decided to transform it into the fourth main entry, likely for branding and attempting to surprise fans with something new. But as I explained earlier, this rebranding was not successful at all, because OG fans were quick to sense the separation between this game and the previous three, despite the positive elements such as the amazing antagonist Walter Sullivan. So to claim that Silent Hill 4 is among Konami's future plans is really hard, and I can never believe it unless there's an official announcement. With that being said, let me now explain to you why remaking Silent Hill 4 would be a very reasonable decision in my opinion. When we judge older video games in general, keep in mind that people's mentalities and opinions vastly differ from one generation to another. So 20 years ago, players' judgments were mainly based on the state of gaming at the time and what was considered exciting in that specific era. In 2004, psychological horror was basically in its early stages, and the popular examples were predominantly third-person experiences that relied on relatively large environments to surprise you as you progressed, which is why Silent Hill Town became so beloved. So the idea of being confined in an apartment and exploring it through a first-person perspective, while also dealing with apparitions and paranormal occurrences, was not only foreign to Silent Hill, but also unusual in horror gaming in general. But if you fast forward 10 years in time and introduce the same ideas to players in 2014, you'll see a completely different reaction with overwhelming positivity. We don't really need to imagine this scenario because it literally happened in 2014 when PT was released. I don't know if you're familiar with this or not, but Kojima's ideas in PT were actually inspired by various Silent Hill games, and it is widely believed that Silent Hill 4's apartment was the source of inspiration behind the corridor and the house's claustrophobic nightmare. You can also feel this when you remember the hauntings in Silent Hill 4, which were certain supernatural changes and bizarre entities that appear in the apartment after each cycle. PT has this same phenomenon after each loop because every time you explore the house, you find something new, and the atmosphere becomes increasingly nightmarish. So if you think about it, remaking Silent Hill 4 might be the best revival of PT we can ever have. Especially if the new developers had some creative liberty to add the necessary changes. And speaking of changes, let me be clear, Silent Hill 4 is a game that needs changes more than any other title in the franchise, and staying too faithful to the source material would be a huge disadvantage here. The reason is because the game was a combination of so many good ideas, but they all were thrown all over the place in a big mess, resulting in an experience that feels strangely unfinished and lacking context. There are many vague details in the story that can become much more interesting if they are clarified deeper in the remake. For instance, Walter's parents are entirely anonymous, and this ambiguity has been driving me insane for decades since I played the game. I genuinely wanted to know more information about the couple who left him in the apartment and what happened to them in the following years. Furthermore, Henry's background in the story is also disturbingly mysterious. What we know is that he works as a photographer, and he mentions multiple statements about the town of Silent Hill, including his visitations since his childhood. So expanding Henry's backstory and highlighting his history in the remake would really be an amazing change for me, because the original game left me with more questions than answers. I would also love to discover more about why he's among Walter's targets, and what made him special enough to go through this journey after the demise of several residents before him. But if we're talking about the #1 advantage that a remake can have, it has to be the gameplay mechanics, which is exactly what Silent Hill 4 was missing. Silent Hill 4 is the definition of a game that needs to be modernized and refined, meaning that it's basically an example of why remakes are needed in our generation. The trashy combat, the horrible controls, and the stupid enemy behavior are all flaws that can easily become qualities if they receive a modern touch from talented developers. In other words, the new developers should maintain the original concept and disturbing details, but when it comes to gameplay and mechanics, they really need to let their imaginations go loose. And by the way, there's a chance that a remake can enhance Walter's iconic presence in the game even further, by exploring his motives deeper and fleshing out his connection to the cult more effectively, which might involve additional possible endings that do him justice. To summarize everything I said in this video, my point is simply that Silent Hill 4 is definitely a game that deserves a remake for countless reasons. But whether this remake is feasible or not, the answer is not simple at all. Konami is among the most frugal companies in gaming history, and they're known for avoiding any type of risk because they always want to play it safe with their money. So it's extremely difficult to guess if their plans for remakes will include the most notoriously negative title in the Team Silent era, especially since it already failed financially and fans were not even excited about the original version. Let me know in the comments what you think about this game. If you're an old Silent Hill fan, I want to know if you loved it decades ago, or if you're among the people who felt something was off when playing it. And if you're a new fan, let me know if you want to experience the game for the first time, and whether the outdated mechanics are pushing you away. Anyway, please give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Until we meet again, stay safe and take it easy.
Oh shit! Exclusive, the Justice Department told President Trump in May that his name is among many in the Epstein files. What does this mean? Bondi also told the president at a meeting that the Justice decided not to release more Jeffrey Epstein documents because of the presence of child pornography and the need to protect victims. That's total bullshit. They could have censored that out. Nobody was asking for that in the beginning. They discovered Donald Trump's name appeared multiple times, according to senior administration officials. In May...
Wait a moment. This was last May.
Time to drop the really big ball. Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That's the real reason they have not been made public. Have a nice day, Donald Trump. Mark this post for the future. The truth will come out. If Trump was implicated in those files, the media and Democrats wouldn't have dropped that nuke. So you bring up a very good point. If Trump was actually implicated in these files, why didn't the Democrats drop it? And do you want to know the reason why, I think? It's because they were implicated too. The accelerationist in me hopes that at the end of the day, this causes the Epstein files to get released. Now he has to prove that it isn't true. Here's the problem though. If Trump shows the Epstein files, a lot of people are going to say that it's fake. How can we trust the Trump administration to be able to do this authentically when the biggest thing that they ran on, they're not releasing? And I think that's a big problem. Would you want Trump to be impeached if he's in the Epstein files? No, I'd want people to go to jail. If Trump is found to be involved in the Epstein files and he was involved with any sort of human trafficking of anyone, not even including of anyone of any age, especially underage people, then no, I want him to go to jail. Like, I don't care about impeachment. Who cares about impeachment? Trump got impeached twice and nothing happened. Jail him? Yeah, but they need Bill Clinton in jail? How about this? How about everybody goes to jail that did bad stuff with underage people? How about that? I think that's a really good idea. So what if we did this crazy thing where anybody who commits sex crimes against people who are underage goes to jail? What? They all go to jail. How about that?
The stunning revelations that we are releasing today should be of concern to every American. This is not about Democrats or Republicans. This has to do with the integrity of our democratic republic and American voters having faith that the votes cast will count. There is irrefutable evidence that detail how President Obama and his national security team directed the creation of an intelligence community assessment that they knew was false. They knew it would promote this contrived narrative that Russia interfered in the 2016 election to help President Trump win, selling it to the American people as though it were true. It wasn't. The report that we released today shows in great detail how they carried this out. They manufactured findings from shoddy sources. They suppressed evidence and credible intelligence that disproved their false claims. They disobeyed traditional tradecraft intelligence community standards.
By the way, until there are arrests, I sleep. I need to see arrests. That's what I want. Until we get that.
And withheld the truth from the American people. In doing so, they conspired to subvert the will of the American people who elected Donald Trump in that election in November of 2016.
I remember that.
They worked with their partners in the media to promote this lie, ultimately to undermine the legitimacy of President Trump and launching what would be a year's...
And to also create a new narrative of xenophobia against Russians. To reignite Cold War tensions, to create another oppositional relationship with a nation that, I mean, I don't know. I mean, would Crimea and Ukraine have happened if America hadn't done this? I mean, yeah, probably, right? But like, I'm sure, I don't think it helped. I don't think that it helps the government, and I don't think it helps our international relations when we're making up bullshit about what other governments are doing. Fuck Russia? What? For how long? For how long are we going to just keep doing that? It's crazy.
Long coup against him and his administration.
Forever?
We're here today because the American people deserve the truth, they deserve accountability, and they deserve justice. The records that we released on Friday that were ODNI records, Senator Chuck Grassley's...
I'm surprised that I'm getting any pushback on this. Isn't it obviously bad that you have the administration of a government that just makes up a lie about a foreign government? Wouldn't that obviously strain relations with that government? I feel like this is the most obvious common sense thing that I can say. Yeah, of course. And I don't think that's good at all. I think it's ultimately bad. Why would anybody be defending this at all? It doesn't mean that I like Russia, but needlessly antagonizing them with a lie is unnecessary, and it causes problems. It's an unforced error, especially when it's being done just to score political points. It's ridiculous. Why do you believe this lie? Because there hasn't been enough proof shown that Russia hacked the election, or they took it over, or they were able to take advantage and co-opt our election system. I don't think it happened.
Release on Monday of what is known as the Clinton Annex, which was an appendix to the Department of Justice Office of Inspector General's 2018 report, as well as the House Intelligence Committee's majority oversight report.
By the way, I don't think the 2020 election was rigged either. I think it's just people complaining that it's rigged because they lost. Oh, I was lagging. No, he was aimbotting. They're cheating. They're cheating. No, you lost. You lost, and you're looking for somebody to blame. That's it. You can't accept that you lost, and so you have to figure out there's some sort of external thing that justifies why you fucked up. That's what I would say. Are you talking about the entirety of world history and governments lying about each other? History is written by the winners? Yeah, but usually winners don't needlessly start conflicts for no reason. They don't.
Report that we're releasing today all come back to and confirm the same report. There was a gross politicization and manipulation of intelligence by the Obama administration intended to delegitimize President Trump even before he was inaugurated, ultimately usurping the will of the American people. I'm going to go over the key findings from the House Intelligence report, which investigated the claims that were made by an intelligence community assessment ordered by President Obama and published in January of 2017. First, Putin's principal interests relating to the 2016 election were to undermine faith in the U.S. democratic process, not show any preference of a certain candidate. In fact, this report shows Putin held back leaking held back from leaking compromising material on Hillary Clinton prior to the election, instead planning to release it after the election to weaken what Moscow viewed as an inevitable Clinton presidency.
Damn, so they thought Hillary was going to win.
In the January 2017 intelligence community assessment that President Obama ordered, John Brennan, who was CIA director at the time, and the intelligence community...
So Putin was in on it? Yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, I bet we probably have bad information that makes Russia look bad, too, that we don't share.
Intentionally
Never play a card unless you have to. Why would you do that?
suppressed intelligence that showed Putin was saving the most damaging material that he had in his possession
For
about
after
Hillary
she's in
Clinton
power.
until after her potential and likely victory.
Exactly.
The report goes into great detail about the information that Russia and Putin had on Hillary Clinton, which included possible criminal acts like secret meetings with multiple named U.S. religious organizations in which State Department officials offered, in exchange for supporting Secretary Clinton's campaign for the presidency, significant increases in financing from the State Department. They also had documents that showed the patronage of the State Department to State Department employees who would go and support Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign.
I mean, what do you guys think? Do you guys think they made this bullshit up to make Trump look bad? I think they absolutely did. If I was Obama, I'd probably want to do that shit too. Trump spent fucking 5 years talking about how Obama was from Kenya. Of course Obama's going to try to fuck Trump. Of course he's going to try. Absolutely. Yeah, bro, he spent fucking years going around telling everybody that you're a fucking Kenyan. Yeah, absolutely you're going to do that. Huh? Yes!
There were high-level DNC emails that detailed evidence
You gotta be
of
honest. You gotta
Hillary's,
be
quote,
realistic.
psycho-emotional problems,
I'm just
uncontrolled
saying
fits
the way
of
it
anger,
is.
aggression, and cheerfulness, and that then Secretary Clinton was allegedly on a daily regimen of heavy tranquilizers.
Hold up.
And cheerfulness, and that then of Hillary's, quote, psycho-emotional problems, uncontrolled fits of anger, aggression, and cheerfulness, and that then Secretary Clinton was allegedly on a daily regimen of heavy tranquilizers.
Huh.
Hillary's, quote, psycho-emotional problems, uncontrolled fits of anger, aggression, and cheerfulness, and that then Secretary Clinton was allegedly on a daily regimen of heavy tranquilizers.
That sucks, bro. Like, that's... Damn. It's sad. Yeah, she crazy. Yeah, she a crazy bitch, bro. Like, what the fuck? Oh my god. They had to put this bitch on tranquilizer? Think about that. You gotta do that for like a bull.
Then CIA Director Brennan and the intelligence community
Harambe.
mischaracterized intelligence and relied on dubious substandard sources to create a contrived false narrative that Putin developed a quote-unquote clear preference for Trump. Brennan and the IC misled lawmakers by referencing...
Well, it wasn't even that Putin developed a clear preference. It was that back then, Hillary Clinton was like way harsher on saying negative stuff about Russia. She was. She went way harder on Russia. And one of the different reasons why I think people voted for Trump in 2016 is that Trump didn't want to escalate tensions between Russia and the U.S. So it would logically make sense that, at least from the Russian perspective, Trump would be more preferential, at least from a public perspective. Yeah, this was, yeah, great. Yeah, I mean, I remember seeing this happen. I was there.
Debunked Steele dossier.
No, they didn't. They absolutely did. What do you mean? Who else was there? Who else remembers this?
To assess, quote-unquote, Russia's plans and intentions, falsely suggesting that this dossier had intelligence value when he knew that it was discredited. The intelligence community excluded significant intelligence and ignored or selectively quoted reliable intelligence that contradicted the intelligence community assessment's key findings on Putin's alleged support for Trump,
Man.
including this intelligence reporting, would have exposed the ICA's claim as implausible, if not ridiculous. The intelligence community assessed.
So why wouldn't they try to get Trump elected? Simple. It's because if they interfered in the election, it would be too high risk of an action, and it would cause too much blowback if it was discovered. They also might not have had the technology or the ability to do it with a 100% certainty to get away with it, and it's unpredictable. That's the reason why. Yeah, like, I mean, again, and so that's the same reason why Putin released it so naive. No, you're actually the one that's naive because you're not thinking about this. You're thinking about this one step ahead. There's a reason why Putin has been in charge of Russia for like 30 years. It's because he's extremely intelligent, he's brutal, cunning, and I just think it's crazy how many people that he doesn't like that end up dying. Isn't that weird? How does that happen? Yeah, he's an ex-KGB agent. Like, he's not stupid at all. And so anyway, like, basically, the reason why he didn't release the negative stuff about Hillary Clinton is because he was worried that there's a chance or a probability that it could also galvanize the public against Russia because they could see Russia as now attacking Hillary Clinton, and then it could have the opposite effect. Whereas if he released it when she was president, it would have a guaranteed effect of negatively impacting her. And also he could use that for leverage later on down the road against her directly. Whereas whenever she's not the president, you can't use that for leverage. Bullshit? No, it's not bullshit. It's not bullshit. It's common sense. Like, just think about it. Think about it. Never play a card unless you have to. Yeah, it's an ace up the sleeve. Yeah, you never go and do that. Yeah, it's blackmail 101. Yeah, I mean, like, I'm surprised that so many people... A lot of people don't understand anything beyond basic cause and effect, and even that's hard for people to understand. But there are oftentimes decisions that people make where they lose a battle to win a war. And I think that's very clearly what his perspective is. Yeah, it's wasteful playing it early. You need to ban these idiots or doing this shit on purpose to distract. I just think that people don't understand the way that you make decisions this way, right? Why are you surprised? Do you understand actual subversion? I think I do. I think that I have a better understanding of it than most people, at least. I don't think I understand it as well as Putin does, but based off of what his decisions were, it seems like they made sense based off of my understanding of subversion. It does. I spent a lot of time on the internet, you know, playing games, dealing with people in business with stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Like, I'm not a wizard. Like, there's people that know a lot more about it than I do, but I bet if you ask them, they'd say the same thing I am. Go ask them.
Omitted reliably sourced information, such as how some Russian intelligence officials were quote-unquote planning for candidate Hillary Clinton's victory, while others assessed neither Trump nor Clinton would respect Russia's interests. Yeah. As was reflected in the ODNI documents that we released on Friday, multiple intelligence community assessments released in the months leading up to the November 2016 election concluded that Russia had neither the intent nor capability to impact the outcome of the U.S. election.
Yep.
On December 5th of 2016, the FBI and ODNI gave the House Intelligence Committee its first post-election classified briefing, in which there was no mention of Putin aspiring to elect Trump by either agency.
And that's the thing, too, is that even if they thought Putin was trying to get Trump elected, they didn't have a reason to... They didn't have a defined reason. It was just like a guess. If they do arrest him, I would be shocked. But we'll see what happens, right? I mean, I don't know. And let's see here. Operation No Obama was finding it out there. It says he committed treason.
Months leading up to the November 2016 election concluded that Russia had neither the intent nor capability to impact the outcome of the U.S. election. On December 5th...
We've been listening there to the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, continuing on what has now been a multi-day effort, not only with public statements like this, but releasing...
He's doing everything he can to distract people, dude. Well, I feel like you can always say that he's trying to distract from the Epstein documents, but in my opinion, like, if you tried to manufacture a conspiracy as the sitting president to delegitimize the next president and, like, to basically blame it on a foreign power, I feel like that kind of, I don't know, is that treason or not? But I feel like that should be against the law. I mean, it's definitely you did something wrong, didn't you? It's pretty fucking obvious. Yeah, like Biden, it's way bigger. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's treason because you're not, it's seditious. Yeah, it's something like that. And so, yeah, totally jail-worthy. Yeah, absolutely.
They believe that no one, especially the president, is above the law.
Well, we're going to find out how true that really is.
We will be releasing further documents tomorrow that will refute that statement. And I would go back and point to, and we will be pulling a whole host of statements that were made by the Obama administration, by Hillary Clinton, by senior Democrat officials, by their friends in the media that state over and over again after this January 2017 manufactured intelligence document was created, that repeat the narrative. And I'm looking at my notes here. New York Times says Russian hackers acted to aid Trump in the election. Obama's CIA Director John Brennan says there is strong consensus among us to support the CIA claim Russian hackers aided Donald Trump's election. Hillary Clinton said, I would be president if not for the Russian hackers supporting Donald Trump. So there is a vast body of evidence and intelligence that debunks and refutes this statement you've just read and others coming from some of the Democrat leaders in Congress today.
Man,